please welcome from Matomo, their Chief Revenue Officer, Dion Blair.
Thank you, Justin. Afternoon all. Always a hard ask doing not even the post-afternoon tea, because you've been ripped off on that. But the afternoon tea that was promised, and what on earth, he better make this good. So with a bit of humour, let me start by just tying in something that Grant and Aubrey said about Parello and the purpose of this in the afternoon. In my experience, one should always try and create a blink response in the afternoon to at least buy yourself another 10 minutes before the lids get heavy. So it was a really interesting story that got told about how marketing didn't get on with sales, and sales don't really get on with product, and product don't really get on with customer success. And prior to this role, and prior to my 10 years with Sequent, I was a bodyguard for Metallica and Slipknot. And both those bands are they are beautiful musicians, not that Slipknot is my cup of tea by any means, but they are really theatrical and great musicians when they get together. The 9 of them hate one another. The same with James and Kirk and Lars from Metallica. They absolutely hate one another, but they come together in the Parello model and they make really good music, hence the importance of marketing. The segue of that and the blink response is that my CEO has just given his blessing for me to go and be Metallica's bodyguard for a month in June through Europe. So there you go, happy days. So there's fight in the old dog yet. For those of you who have seen Kevin Costner's Bodyguard, then long live the old guy, right? So Matomo, what's the story that we're going to tell here? So a little bit of it's a story, and some of it's going to be a bit of a rhetorical question around. And I know that that'll still be sinking in. What on earth's Matomo? And this guy's just talking about Metallica and Slipknot, so at least the blink response worked, right? So let's talk a little bit about the story of Matomo. And Matomo actually means honesty in Japanese, which is a nice play on the ethical stand that we'll go in a minute. But actually, the CEO and co-founder, Matthew Aubrey, French, lives in Wellington, has been in New Zealand for 13 or 14 years. And the CTO, German, lives in Wellington. Both of them have obviously selected very well in their partners, and both married Kiwi women, and are now domiciled here. But you'll see the play on that actually Matomo is Matt and Thomas, and that was kind of where it came from for a start, because let's do something where we're together and we're collaborative, and then as they look deeper, what does that mean in terms of honesty? So the mission that they set about was really to build this open source analytics platform that was really the caped crusader of analytics, something that did the right thing with the customer's data, because effectively what Matt and Thomas saw, that there was no one else really looking at analytics from a privacy point of view. Analytics was all about decision making and data-driven decision making, and obviously that great beast that does it so beautifully is Google. They do analytics so beautifully well. And to be honest, have created a wonderful market for themselves and a bit of a rod for their own back. But ultimately, Matt and Thomas's mission here was to empower web professionals. And it was all about this approachable solution. And ultimately, at the core of that was giving you your data to do what you wanted with it. So no sampling, no need to sort of pry in over the fence. And we'll come to some of the challenges with that in a little while, because there is really the essence of eating your own dog food here, so much so that they didn't have a CRM. They don't really talk to their customers because that might not be private. And they had taken that to the nth degree. But I'm a talker and I'm a listener, but I love the essence of why customers buy a certain product. And I think that's something that I've tried to permeate through the business, because we've heard this ad nauseum today, beautifully told in the stories that we've heard around getting close to your customers, because ultimately they're the reason that you all have salaries. They're the reason we get to come to work and develop new software and develop new strings of the software, because someone buys it and continues to buy it, and that person is a customer. So a little bit about Matomo's history. They founded in 2007, and again, it was all about this Cape Crusader. The the good versus evil, I guess. 2012, 1 million on-premise downloads. 2017, they launched cloud. 2019, they had 3,000 active customers. And 2023, right now, we have 12,000 active customers, 1.4 million websites worldwide. And I think actually when I first joined them, I think they were one of New Zealand's best kept tech secrets. But actually, that said, there are so many of those best kept tech secrets, both in this room and beyond. Because I think one of the things we heard, I think it was one of the speakers earlier in the panel actually, that talked about how humility means that we probably don't brag a lot. Someone else said it beautifully about, we are different between New Zealand and Australians. And I think what Australians do really well, actually, we might call it arrogance. They just swagger. They kind of talk a little bit more about their business, and we kind of often go, "Oh, I'm not sure I like that." They swagger nicely. And I think it's not so much arrogance, it's just swag. We tend not to. We tend to kind of go into our shells and someone will find out about us and someone will ask, but actually what if they don't? So this is a little bit about the growth curve, and I didn't put any numbers on here because God forbid if I was lucky enough to get away with the dates. If Matt and Thomas see sharing of data, it's the poison chalice. All jokes aside, you kind of see the trajectory here, and there's a bit of a segue into the story of what you see differently from 2018 and what you see going through that period. So really the key to that is that in 2018 there was a European Union conglomerate that introduced a framework called GDPR, the Good Data Privacy Regulation. Now, ironically, a lot of New Zealand businesses have certain aspects of their strategy that are built around GDPR, but I'm going to be slightly brazen here, and I'm going to assert that most New Zealand businesses haven't got a clue. Why? Because it doesn't really affect us. We want to do the right things. Don't get me wrong, there's not a sort of a deliberate pathway to doing the wrong things with customer data, but there's no real punitive or recoursive action if we don't. Whereas in the EU, there is. And so much so that post-GDPR, in 2021, the first European country, their data protection regulation, ruled Google Analytics illegal. Austria. France followed, Italy followed, Denmark followed, and soon Norway will follow. So you can't actually legally use Google Analytics if you're in one of those countries. You can, and risk being fined 4% or 20 million euros. And they're working collaboratively with those businesses so that it's not just about taking something away from them and then not giving them a pathway to at least find an alternative. But things changed for Matomo from that 2018 because all of a sudden GDPR was no longer a lip service. Then add to that, you had 5 countries where it's now illegal. So you've kind of got this perfect storm beginning to brew for a company that just really set out to do the right thing. So, in terms of the scale-up aspect of this business that went from kind of feel good to actually having to really pull its socks up and be a player in the market because lots of people are knocking on the door or knocking on the product door, whichever entrance they want in to basically become a part of it. So what are the growth factors? I guess with any business, whether or not you've got a value proposition, you've really got to look at your market size. Does anyone in the room want to hazard a guess how many websites there are globally? No, I'll put you out of your misery. There are 2 billion websites globally. 17% of those, or around about 350 million, are active. All right, and of that 350 million, about 140 million use a little thing called Google Analytics. So they have 85% market share. But what Google did, and in my slightly market blindness, I kind of went, well, why don't Google just make their software GDPR compliant? How hard would that be? But you see, Google have created for themselves a beautiful algorithm of advertising business that nets themselves about 400 million a year. So they're not interested in GDPR compliance because that would mean that part of their business has to go away. So I kind of went, right, that makes perfect sense. So the first thing I thought was, well, in insulating the market, you've kind of got to be able to think about, well, 100 million using Google, what's the rip and replace? What's the marketing strategy to get them to swing? Why would you not love Google? They make gorgeous analytics software and it's free, even so is Matomo. But why would you move? So the first of the growth factors really is around market size, and as it relates to that, your serviceable, addressable market. In Matomo's case, 100 million websites using an analytics tool, whereby you've got an analytics tool and they might have a reason for you. But as we heard from Pat earlier, and the stats that we've looked at are very, very similar in that generally there are 95 or there are the 100% of people that are in looking at analytics or needing analytics in any product actually, SaaS-wise, 5% of that market is actually buyer ready. But here's the perfect storm. So you've got GDPR compliance, you've got GA being illegal, and then you've got that's the CNIL, the decision that was made that obviously reinforces the decision that needs to be made, but then off the back of the decision that's been enforced is the indecision. Surely Google will change, they'll do something, they're gorgeous, they're free, I've been using them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, and all of my keywords and all of my algorithms are based on, they won't do that. They won't do that to us. And the part that's been hard for us, one of the challenges is the likes of the CNIL. Now, the CNIL is one of those data protection authorities that made the decision that Google Analytics would be illegal. They're the French body of that. And then they approached us and said, just letting you know, we're recommending you because we use Matomo now. You're like, gosh, isn't this a conflict of interest? You're a data regulatory authority that's supposed to be impartial, and you're recommending clients who come to us and say, well, we can't use Google, what are we supposed to use? You should use Matomo. So, that's created a nice little, particularly for Matt and Thomas, who are caped crusaders, like to do the right thing, and rightly so. We might need some sound on this next video if that's something you've got. So, if I come back to the market drivers again, and this is probably the third of the groundswells, GDPR, GA illegal, and then this one. And we thank Umalt for their beautiful work. They're a B2B video sales company that specialise in helping create videos for sales for sales reasons. Oh. If I go back. Is there a noticeable click? Oh, really? Not a video?
No, not a video. There was a video in the original.
Here's one he prepared earlier. Beautiful, there you go. The rest of this, you can just flip to this version of the Prezzo from here anyway if you want. Oh no, you're going to work your magic. Beautiful.
I knew this day would come. I just didn't know it would happen so fast.
Dad? What's coming?
Sunset. No.
What?
Google is sunsetting Universal Analytics.
What's the difference between Universal Analytics and GA4?
No one knows. You have to manually check items off the setup assistant. Shouldn't it know if you did that step or not? Okay. I think I got it figured out.
Dad, it says Google's gonna automatically make you a GA4 property in March if you don't manually make one by then.
Wait, I already have a GA4 property. Does that mean it's not working?
Why do I have more session starts and page views?
Stay close. Why does it keep telling me I need to migrate my analytics if I already have a GA4 property?
It says to reuse my existing tags, but what are the new triggers?
It's sunset.
Dad, what was Google Reader?
There are some brilliant marketing agencies out there that have obviously played on the pain that some are experiencing right now, but really that was that third of the market of the groundswell that's really sort of put Matomo both in a wonderful position, but in a spotlight of itself, because I think, our biggest markets at the moment are very much Europe because of GDPR and GA being illegal in those countries. But the groundswell now around the sunset, and in particular, I don't think the guys wouldn't be so blind as to admit that, it wasn't ever foreseen that when Google sunset Universal Analytics, that they would not give their customers a pathway to bring the legacy across into, they're totally different platforms, as I'm sure anyone in this room has experienced. You need to leave your world behind. And all of a sudden we found a unique selling point with Matomo because you don't. Matomo basically created a migrate button that you just bring your Google world with you. And all of the reports and historic data and keywords that have gone back 10 years, it'll just take it all and let you keep playing nicely. And I guess what I said to Matt and Thomas, well, how many people know about this? And we kind of admitted the same as that guy so beautifully said in the parody. How many people know about it? No one. And that's been a real flaw for us in the marketing, is that how well do you accentuate your value propositions? Because one of the things we don't have a problem with, and one of the other growth factors in marketing, is that customer retention. We've heard a bit about that with regards to the importance on customer success, the importance on the after sales care. But as a result of that, as a result of doing that quite nicely, we've been a little bit blind and forgotten about, some of the unique selling points that we should be marketing to. And I guess this is sort of bubbling up into one of the stories here. Just a couple of little figures. We have a 2% churn. So basically, once you get somebody into the software, then they really just stay there. Because it's actually not designed perfectly this way, but it is a very similar look and feel to Universal Analytics. So people it's not so foreign once people come in there. But again, we don't really talk about that because it's a weird phenomenon, isn't it? From a marketing perspective, that you would actually kind of plump up your competitor to say, hey, we look like you. And what you should come to us for that reason, because, well, that's not a unique selling point, but it soon will be. So product market fit is one of the fourth pillars, I guess, of the growth piece. And one of the things, again, that's a positive, but that's also a challenge, is that product market fit has kind of been early doors, come from a very technical background. So Matt and Thomas, beautifully technical. But someone like me who maybe wants to look at a video or get a quick sort of expose or a case study, you need to dive into rote and verse and 16 pages of, when I first joined the company, Matt had all the values laid out in about 24 pages. And you're like, oh my word, these aren't values. This is Bible-like. Because detail is important. And detail is important in marketing, but in the buyer journey, it's emotion that matters as well as detail. Because as we heard today, quite rightly, people buy from people. But also, I guess, again, we've heard his name bandied about a bit in terms of Simon Sinek, but Simon Sinek beautifully said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And one of the great things about Matomo is the reason they did it and built it was to have a free open source, and they've built 165,000 users in a community of something that is a good analytics. They didn't build it, weirdly enough, to make money. I think it's come as much of a surprise to them as it has to anybody else. But their roots were really for very good reasons. So again, that privacy has become part of that product market fit, the low cost of acquisition. But I've been really intrigued listening to the panel around partners and that model, and that's certainly blowing my mind at the moment in terms of what that potentially could be for us. And the customer reviews and feedback, again, because we are someone that has kept this a little bit secret, we've really overly subscribed, I think at times, to the privacy aspect, where one of the things Matomo does the minute you enter the front door is it anonymizes your data so that it literally can eat its own dog food, so that protects the customer's data on behalf of whomever it is that's using that website. The problem with that is that when you anonymize, you then vaporize and you let someone sort of drift off that might have a great story to tell, that might want to advocate for you, that might want to promote you but you don't really speak to them, because the only time you do is when they come in the door for a problem, or they maybe want you to develop something. But they're really they're two important parts of the equation, but you're missing the huge aspect of just simply this constant stream of voice of customer, good, bad, or indifferent. Privacy has kind of meant they've taken that so seriously they've forgotten to talk to them. So I wanted to use and we heard a lot today about values. This is kind of our headlights that I bought and I stole from another company that I was with. And the acronym here is, and really why it's important is the L mostly, but effectively our headlights and where we're all going is in the same direction as it relates to the ascent or the climb, the C being clear and compelling vision. That clear and compelling vision has to be easily understood by everyone that's there so that they know what they're doing, what's expected of them, and that's got to start from the top, but it's a story that we can all tell. The L is really one of the things that I've seen us do well and do well fast, and that is let the customer be in the center of your universe. So the customer guides us. So we've started to bring the voice of customer to life. We've started to give weight to what we might be developing or the future direction based on the voice of customer, not based on the intuition or the subjectivity of two very clever guys who are the co-founders, because that's not scalable. So the L has been one of the huge issues. It was an issue. It's been one of the huge evolutions. The I is to involve every mind, M, be to manage horizontally, and the B is to be humble. And I've loved hearing that today, because I think that's one of the reasons that Matomo's done really well, but I think it'll be one of the reasons that it continues to do well is that it is really, really humble. And we've heard a lot of the stories today that actually accentuate that value. But what I did was I changed this. In fact, just in case, I was going to do a little quiz on this, but again, I did one blink response. You don't want to do two. From a brand marketing point of view, I would be a right pain in the ass of any marketer, because I basically put my little show together and then I just change the fonts and there's different color schemes and there's what. So any brand marketer sitting there going, that guy is literally needs a slap around the behind, because I've not seen a lot of consistency in what he does, and that's probably exactly what you get with me, consistently inconsistent. So what I did was I've changed. Again, I've got buy-in from that clear and compelling vision. We've got buy-in from the exec team, and in the middle used to sit the product. Now, when I first took my view on that, they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think that's wonderfully arrogant that the product would be in the center of what you do, because basically what that is that's just almost having a deaf ear in the middle, because you decide what's right." You decide what a customer wants, and then you make what you decide. And the risk is that you get that wrong, and you invest and you go in a direction that doesn't resonate with actually who should be in the middle, and that is the customer. Let the customer be in the center of your universe. And yes, by all means, the layer around that is the product, but then not so insignificantly, I put marketing at the top, which caused a little bit of consternation. Why would they be at the top? Well, because actually, We heard that beautifully talked about by Carolyn. That strategic narrative starts from the CEO, the clear and compelling vision, but it's got to be owned and a point of differentiation from marketing. And I loved what was said about that. I thought that was brilliantly said. And ultimately, marketing as a feedback loop is both the ears, the analysis, and the collaborator alongside product. So I made sure I didn't leave them behind, and I even gave them some bullet points so that Matt and Thomas felt that they were even extra special because no one else got bullet points. But ultimately, the L has been a big shift for us. So a sales and marketing strategy, and I'm not going to talk about the sales part of it. I'm just going to basically touch on some of the levers and some of the challenges. So here's one of the. You talk about market drivers, and I don't think we could have any more of a perfect storm in an analytics world when you've got your biggest competitor and the world's biggest competitor in that space. 85% of the market are illegal in 5 countries. They're not interested in being GDPR compliant, and they're sunsetting and not giving a bridge for people to walk over. But the problem with that is, where the hell do you start from a marketing perspective? So one of the things that, by talking to marketers, actually we had a great conversation with a marketer that Justin put us onto, that talked about not buying Matomo or what the problems were with the GA4 journey, and where do people going into that journey, where do they hang out? Where do they go? Where do they go to try and solve the problems? What forums? What aspects? And we suddenly realized that actually one of the things we're not doing was we're not really doing anything on YouTube, and YouTube's kind of just the balanced, light-hearted way that people might go and look up tutorials. And God forbid that we might be one of those pains in the backies that actually come up with a little ad. What we've kind of done is created a series of I loved again the 70s marketing thing. We've created a series of videos kind of in the same vein as the PC versus Mac. Hi, I'm PC, I'm Mac. And we're creating one, hi, I'm Matomo, I'm Google. And basically, we just want to, because people that are looking at that forum are not necessarily solution aware. They're problem aware because they're having to migrate to GA4. But what we suddenly realize is that people that are hanging out there are actually not necessarily solution aware that there is even an alternative for them. They're just going down GA4 because that's what they have to do. So we thought, you know what, in the vein of New Zealand humour, let's just throw something up there that says, oh my God, my world, swallow me now. Actually, here's something that I can have a laugh with. And if it means that we've created a bit of solution awareness, ideally, you might want to try. But ultimately, do you know what, if nothing else, if you can kind of impact on someone's moment of angst, and in, I think, Livy's case, there was 4 hours of angst, then, away it went. So the challenge for us, to wrap, is that we have got an unbelievable marketing opportunity that's really being pushed at the moment organically and not necessarily being executed on with a whole lot of really strategic marketing pieces. I would love to hear ideas around levers that you would pull. By all means, throw me some notes, throw me some LinkedIn messages. I would love to hear ideas around levers that if you were in the situation of things you would pull, some of which we might be doing, but let's be humble about the fact that actually I'd just love to hear ideas. But the biggest thing that dawned on me a couple of weeks ago when I was sitting in the NZTE offices in Auckland was that up on their board is this Ko mātou ēnei. Ko mātou ēnei, this is us. And one of the challenges that I've put to the Matomo exec is actually for us, ko wai tātou. Ko wai tātou, who are we? Because one of the risks that we've got as a business that we're being defined, and almost actually our keywords on Google Ads, wonderful vehicle, our keywords on Google Ads are GA4 alternative, not GA, GDPR compliant, GA something else, GA's not that, GA pants. But ko wai tātou, who are we? Because you can't be defined by what you're not. And the challenge for us is that we're not GA, but that's not really a story, is it? You know, like that doesn't really define who you are. So I guess in closing, the takeaway for us is that we're doing bloody well. And actually, alongside a lot of other Kiwi companies, it's great. Do you know what? In a sense, when one of the marketers calls it the David v Goliath battle, and actually, it's really nice because I like the way New Zealanders play, not to be kicking the pants of your competition. You must always win nicely. You must always lose or win graciously. That's important. But it's quite nice that your biggest opposition is kind of imploding and giving you a free pathway. The risk for us is that ko wai tātou. Who are we? Because in 5 years from now, we can't just expect to be defined by what a big player in the market isn't doing well. We've got to be defined by what we ourselves are doing well. Thanks for listening in the afternoon. I'll leave you to it.